5 biggest mistakes that I've made running my business. You know, sometimes it's a good idea to take an inventory of the mistakes that you make. I'm not doing this to be negative. I'm doing this because I think that it's important to have these discussions with your constituents or with your audience, because you know, they need to know like part of what your struggle was the whole time, or what you were thinking when you made a certain bad decision or whatever. So I would say that mistake number 1 that I probably should not have made this mistake, but this is a pretty common one, was for a long time I would work on cars without putting an estimate together. And this is a bad mistake because it can lead to a lot of anxiety when the customer gets their bill and they go, oh man, it costs this much? Wow. You know, it's always better when you're running a business to be able to give someone an idea of what something will cost and then update them along the way as things change. And I didn't realize the importance of that process, and it ended up costing me a lot of money because I'd have to negotiate invoices down, and sometimes I'd end up losing money. And this was a problem as recently as 2023, where there were some customers where I just thought, oh, they don't need estimates. No, that's wrong. Everybody needs an estimate. Even if the estimate is a little inaccurate or there's some sloppy details in it, everybody needs to know roughly what they're going to have to spend to make a car right. That way they can make a decision before any time or resources are wasted. Let's get into the number 2 mistake. The number 2 mistake that I made early on was not charging enough for my services. So I used to really undercharge. And because I started with 0, you know, there are really 2 ways you could start. You could start by borrowing money so you have less than 0. Or you could start by starting with 0 and figuring out how to use the resources that you have. So I looked at my options and I pretty much had to start from 0. Now some people are smart enough to do the less than 0, where they borrow money to start their business. And my friend Jamie, who I mentioned in the last video, borrowed, you know, probably a decent 6-figure sum of money to take his business and turn it from a side business into his main business. And the way that he did it was brilliant, because he went in, he found a facility, he set the shop up, he didn't spare any money on materials, he didn't start with a mess and then try to spend the next 20 years cleaning up the mess like I did. The only problem was that Jamie, as you know, in his 40s, went in with a credit score and property ownership and a previous job and an income statement. I went in as like a broke college student, so really there was no money available for me at the time, so I really had one way to start. You know, the only problem is that you spend 20 years struggling and you get tired. So when you have the ability to borrow money and improve, you're like, maybe that's not such a good idea. You know, you end up needing things like a business manager, and those sorts of things cost money. I think the third mistake that I made, probably the one mistake that I really regret making, was trying to please my customers using pricing rather than pleasing them using quality of work. So pleasing people meaning, there's actually a better way to describe this. I felt the only way to please my customers was to charge them less than they would have paid anywhere else. So that goes back to trying to please everybody, which you shouldn't try to do. But on the other hand, I was only pleased by doing good work. If I didn't do good work, I felt like I was not being true to myself. And that's still a very strong trait of my personality, although, you know, everybody makes mistakes. I see mistakes that I make and I go back and deal with them. Sometimes there are mistakes that I don't catch and then I have to go back and deal with them later. And that's no fun. And a lot of the time people will accuse you of making mistakes, and in reality, it was just an honest oversight. So what do? Well, I think the solution now is, at least the solution I'm trying to adopt, is trust yourself to do high quality work and trust your customers to pay you a wage that, you know, is economically viable. And so that's one of the reasons why I had to increase what I charged for my work. But at the same time, I had to increase the quality of it, have more parts available, have better quality tools, try to speed up the turnaround time, try to spend more time testing the car, try to delegate tasks to my other employees so that I could spend time fine-tuning the vehicles that we worked on. Now, the number 4 mistake that I made that I really wish that I had not made, this is a big one, I guess. I should have taken some kind of initiative to learn how to manage a business properly. I should have learned about things like AllData or QuickBooks or some kind of billing software. I should have been more legitimate about how I handled things like taxes. This is when I was in my 20s, so the statute of limitations has run out. I should have been more thorough about how I kept my books and my invoices instead of just writing things down on paper. It would have been nice to have a cloud-based platform or some kind of hard drive or something where I kept all my customer records. A lot of these records, by the way, I still have. They're all written, they're all stored in my attic, but I mean, going through these would be quite complicated. And about half of the cars that I used to work on that are not so nice or were not so nice probably aren't even on the road anymore. So that's a big problem too. But I look at my level of professionalism as time went on, and I realized that people took advantage of me because I didn't really have a professional angle that I worked as to how I managed the numbers and the legal side of the business. And people saw this and they took advantage of it and used it. You know, I remember one guy found an issue with my business license. He used it to get $800 taken off of his bill. Thank you, Craig Bailey. You know, and Craig got angry at me because I charged him $800 to fix probably about 15 items in his 300D sedan. So, you know, there are people that are like that, and if you don't have a good professional front to sort of keep things in order, you know, what can you do? Now, I think the fifth mistake I made with this business was the amount of damage I let it do to my physical and mental health. And so I've had some physical and mental health issues over the years that I think were caused by this business. So the first one was that I really had a lot of anxiety, and I still do, about dealing with customers. And part of this is because early on, you know, I was running this business in a bad economy, and you meet some very predatory individuals. And because of dealing with this, you develop some anxieties. Now, part of these problems originated from things like giving one customer a lower hourly rate. I had a customer with an hour, and because the car needed so much work, I agreed to a lower hourly rate. But the thing is, this car needed so much work, and I had so much other work at the time, that I developed a lot of anxiety and some physical health issues trying to finish this car as well. It just freaking drove me crazy, you know? Part of the physical health effects were unwarranted weight gain. I probably lost the best years of my life getting my back beat up and my legs beat up and becoming overweight from eating crappy food just because I was hungry and I binge eat, no time to exercise, no time to sleep. You know, I didn't really sleep well or exercise well for years. And you know, it cost me. Not that I didn't have fun in my 20s and 30s, but I could be going into my 40s in better shape instead of having to fast like 24 hours and then eat one little meal and then eat 15 hours later, and then trying to watch all these metrics and trying to get your spine and your joints straightened out so that you can actually make money now that you figured out how your business is supposed to work. So I really had no mentorship, and I think the mentors that I did have were some of them were good, but some of them were a little bit predatory, you know, and I look at the fact that they didn't really give me the full picture of how I should be running a business. Nobody sat me down and said, hey, you know, I want to help you get some stuff straightened out. Can I? The other problem was I stuck to certain principles I had maybe a little bit too much. For example, if I didn't think a repair went perfectly, I'd way undercharge the customer for it. I'd significantly reduce what I charge them. You know, because I didn't think the work was any good, when in reality the work was probably fine. I still do that a little bit today because I look at how much customers bust my, give me a hard time for certain things. And if they give me a hard time about a problem, I usually just take the labor off and say, okay, here you go. Hope free is good enough, but sometimes free is not good enough. Sometimes it's not even free is good enough sometimes. I want you to remember this if you're performing any kind of service. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Please share the video and channel and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And I hope that in the future you guys come back here for more great Mercedes content and also some of the struggles I've had to learn along the way doing this. I'll see you guys in the future.
Before you go down,